Guys, this is the finale. This is part 3. This is going to be concluding our 3-part mini-series on lessons with Alex and Cartier. I mentioned part 2 that it was amazing what I thought briefly. This one, we're going to get into a bit of a different direction. You'll see how, like I mentioned before. It's going to be me asking a question, honestly, twice, and then he's answering it, and then in a way that's interesting, but you'll see how he turns it around later. So this is going to be a treat, probably my favorite part, not going to lie to you, but I'll see you guys then.
So on the topic of, staying true to who we are and everything, and as a Christian in this world where people are constantly attacking you, there's a sense where my coworker, he's a theist. So he believes in a higher power. He doesn't believe in God like that, but he believes there's some kind of higher power, alien, something, got stuff started at least, or hybridized humans or apes, kind of thing. A couple weeks ago, he took a jab at me. He was like, "You guys really believe that God made Eve from a rib?" And he started laughing. He thought he was cooking or something. He just thought he had me.
Bro thought he was making that
dinner.
He
thought he had me on a rope or something. Like,
he had that Trader Joe's spice, bro.
Because the other Christians around me were kind of like, "Oh, that does kind of sound a little silly." If a rib made a woman out of rib, really? Like it makes how? And so I told him, I was like, what's inside ribs, right? And other bones. He's like, what? I'm like, bone marrow. I'm like, what do you think bone marrow is made out of? Stem cells. A couple other things, fats, different types of cells. But the point was that you can make stem cells can become any kind of cell, and the fact that there's different types of stem cells. And one type, I forgot the name of it, but there's a type that can become any other cell in the body, or it could be coaxed to become that cell. And so the idea that there are stem cells inside this bone marrow, inside of ribs, can tell you all you need to know is that it's plausible to create something from that rib. And so if we can do it with our limited science we know, what could an almighty God do?
Like what do you
with
think
that rib? And he's not explaining. He just say it's just dumb. It's dumbed down. He took a rib, took a rib, made a woman from that. How did God do some scientific process? You never know how he did it. But the fact remains that story, science now has shown us that that's possible. As with a lot of things in biblical stuff like this, these silly ideas that seem silly or seem like far-fetched, science has shown us that more than likely God exists because the advances we make. So every advance we make is just showing us that God he's involved in some capacity. Things that he can do is possible. So I told him that. I'm like, yeah, he had nothing to say. He just kind of sitting there just watching. He's like, I never thought about that. I never thought about that. I'm like, yeah, exactly. You're too busy trying to write God off, and then you spend all your time doing that. You start ignoring the obvious, which is that things in the Bible are possible. So it may seem silly, but when you start applying science to it, it don't sound so silly. And if we can do what we do as limited beings, what can a God do?
So it's really impacted your personal.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really like.
So staying true involves me like accepting accepting. I'm not gonna shut my ears and close my eyes to the world objecting what I believe. I listen to what they say. I'll have conversations with people. Why do you believe what you believe? Beautiful. And I like to see what they believe and why they believe it and what leads them to believe. And a lot of times it boils down to morality. Well, I just don't think how God can exist because there's all these bad things happening. Oh, so you're mad at God because something bad happened to you. Okay, great. So it's not so much how him existing, it's your morality. It's a morality issue. Why could God be? How can he be good if this happens? So then it boils down to that. And that's another conversation. But the fact remains that I like to keep my eyes open to the world and see what people are saying about my faith, so I can find ways to have a conversation, join a conversation with them. And explain a different perspective they never heard. And I'm not like other Christians where I'm just like shut down and just have no idea what they're how to refute what they're saying. I have literally I can literally talk to people and give them insight to why I believe what I believe. And like that story of the rib, like that right there was enough to have him kind of quiet down a little bit and give a new perspective on things. Like
he had all that fire.
He had all
that
fire. He thought he was cooking on the end. He thought he had me on the ropes, and he's just like
immediately, bro.
Wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Huh.
Bro realized he forgot his spoon.
Yeah, so
actually wasn't cooking anything.
So it made more sense. So, but a lot of people they don't think like that. So I try to apply science to explain how all the advances we make in science prove that there's a God.
Because I've seen you grow as a man, in person, and obviously out of person, like from a distance, both sides. And I love how these past 2 years have really shaped who you are. And has really brought you close to your faith and also closer to like what you're probably supposed to do on this earth, because your desires and your passions are probably rooted in something that you're supposed to do through. Like, that's how God works, you know what I mean? He talks about how he'll give us his desires and he'll grant the desires of our heart. Similar to how you get into like how you speak on science in the way that you do. I go so but more so in regards to concepts and realities that we naturally know and don't even question, that we take for granted, like relationships, for an example. Like, and all this ties down to how this has taught me to stay true to myself and what I believe and stay firm. It's like relationships, for an example. Everybody is a relational being. We rely on our parents. We naturally desire social network. Even when we have seasons in our life where we desire to be isolated, we have a deep desire to be connected to. And also that's it's also how you create success is connection. And ultimately, I think that when you look at relationships, and here's where I'm going with this, I would say unless you start with the triune God, you don't really have a basis for why you even have relationships. And that's really what I do. I take a more presuppositional or transcendental approach when it comes to dealing with unbelief, but also when it comes to looking at the world around me and understanding it. You take a scientific approach. How do I look at the world around me?
I try to compare what requires more faith.
Yeah.
What makes more sense.
And it's like, for me, I take the same approach with a different thing itself. Right. And it's, for me, I've been really good with looking at concepts. The triune God, as opposed to a Unitarian God like Allah, or maybe a pagan God that's very finite in nature. And it's like a Unitarian God is in relationship with nothing until he creates something, and yet is somehow relational. Who are you in relationship with?
Why would he want to make humanity in the first place? They want a relationship with it. Why would he want to,
Well, he's not. Yeah, that's the whole. Yeah. He's not relational. He would have to then create the attribute in him for himself, or it has to manifest at some point. Whereas when you have the triunity of God, only through biblical Christianity you actually get that, and provided you're actually understanding that, because then people want to say stupid things like, oh, and this is a whole different conversation. That's like, oh yeah, it's a pagan belief. Like, those are just misunderstandings of it, which we can talk about later, obviously. But it's like the triunity of God. Right there, do you have relationships? Do you have love? Do you have this sense of of peace and all these different things that we read about who God is? And you have that ever eternally in God's personhood through the triunity of God, because you have Father, Son, and Spirit. They're forever loving, so they don't have to create that attribute and then create people with it, and they're forever in relationship. And so you get the idea of relationships, not because, I was born and somebody taught it to me, because who taught it to them? And then who taught it to them? And then all the way back to the first people. If it's not Adam and Eve, then who was it? It was two people. Who taught it to them? Ideas don't come out of nowhere, and not just like paper, pen, stars, and really anything else. It doesn't come from anywhere. If it's not there, it's nowhere. Someone has to put it in being. Notice how we can create what's already there, but not what's not there. So this open space where there's like nothing but air, like there's nothing in this circle that I'm doing. I can't make something in this, but God could. But this table, I could turn this into anything. And so how I look at it, what's really pressed me to stay true to my beliefs these past 2 years is really learning that wow, God, everything that I know, it's only because God gave me the ability to know anything. What do I even know at the end of the day? I don't really know anything. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but it's when you think about it deeply for a second, what do you really know? You only know what God has given you the ability to understand. Apart from Him, you know nothing. And that's really what I meant by that. And so for me, just not taking that for granted, and just the fact that we can even have this conversation is a gift. Bro, we can speak. Think about that. We can speak. What does it mean to speak? Well, to say words. It says who? These aren't things that we should really talk about, but I'm just saying, says who? It's we are, like you said about the cuckoo bird, instilled these ideas. Yeah. And facing those realities has really given me more faith in God. Taking it back to the first point, faith and trust and belief and etc. And so that's allowed me to stay grounded to who I am, despite the hardships that I faced. With everything in mind that you've said, going forward, what do you think that God's really trying? And I'll say mine too, and then we'll wrap it up.
God is real, and if He's real, I need to do what He says I need to do. So I try my best to do that. We're not perfect in anything, but I like to think about, at the end of the day, we're in a constant war, right? So we may lose a battle. We may lose a battle 100 times in a row. We may lose all the battles, but we win the war because someone done the battle for us, right? So Jesus in the seats for us. So he did all the work. All we have to do is have faith in him that he did that for us, and he raises up, right?
Exactly.
So I might lose a battle. I might not get the sin out. I might get away from the sin. I might keep on doing the same thing over again. But in the day, I can relax and have hope that the battle's been won, or the war's been won. I might lose the battle, but the war's already been won. So I sleep good at night knowing that I may lose these battles, but Jesus already won the war for me. So
beautiful. I think for me, like going forward, having hope, knowing that God will take you places. Sorry, I got distracted. God will take you places, but he'll never leave you in those places. And if you really allow him to work in your life and like show him what he's trying to show you, like you'll see everything that he wants to show you. And I think for me, going forward now, what that looks like is just, again, tying back to the first point, is having trust in faith and knowing that God is not going to leave you to yourself. He's not going to have an expectation of you to follow him without providing the way to follow him. That's irrational, and God isn't irrational. So, I don't know. But, brother, appreciate you for coming through. Love you, bro.
Me too.
All right, brother. And then we get that in the video.
And guys, that concludes Lessons with Alex and Cartier. I told you it was a different direction. I did. Some different information, some good information for sure. Very intelligent individual for sure, 100%. Guys, I learned a lot from him. We had a bit of a different discussion, or a similar discussion, but also different a few hours prior. So I may have made some references before. And I learned a lot from him in those moments. Probably, like I said, by far my favorite part. Speaking of favorite part, let me know what your favorite part was. Was it part 1, 2, or was it this one like mine? Well, anyway, guys, if you like this kind of content, let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, like and subscribe. I will drop his socials if you guys want to like shoot him a DM or shoot him a text message, just connect with him. And then I'll drop mine as well, and you can connect with me personally, and we can have some conversations. Going forward, this is the kind of content that I want to put out more. We'll see what God does. But in the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.